Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. So this week's big release was Detective Pikachu, which I saw today. If you remember from my year in review for last year, my predictions, I said that this movie was going to be another example of a bad video game adaptation, because part of what makes a video game work a lot of the time, narrative or not, is the immersion of you being there, and you're taking the role of someone. Every game is a role-playing game in a sense, and you're doing something you couldn't ordinarily do in real life. And Pokemon's a very extreme example of that, because Pokemon don't exist and all of that, so you being a trainer is kind of, doing that, the collecting and all of that, bullcrap. So this movie's coming out, and from how it was announced, I was like, this is a bad idea. This is not a good idea for a movie. I didn't like any of it going forward. I was very pleasantly surprised. This movie was not bad. I think what makes it not bad is that all around in this movie there are strong acting performances by functionally everyone in the cast. With the one exception being the girl who plays Lucy. Granted, I have no idea who this actress is. So I don't know if that's her thing, overacting, but there are a lot of sequences where she's very overacting. And no one's there, and it's not like the director's like telling her to tone it down or anything. Or maybe that's what they're going for. Either way, like her first introduction, when we were introduced to her when the main character, whose name Tim, when Tim gets to Rhyme City, when we're first introduced to her, she's doing full, like, fast-talking reporter, and it's kind of jarring and weird. And then anytime she's on screen, she's kind of leaning too far into that, while in other scenes when she's not doing that, she seems more natural. So I think it's just in those scenes, the direction's more the problem. Justice Smith, who plays Tim, I've never seen him in anything either before. I think this is like a debut performance for him. Fantastic performance by him. This kid really nailed every aspect of it, and really sells what's going on, despite being in this bizarre world with these creatures that it largely is fantasy, but this kid really sells it, and you feel for him. What else was there with this? Ryan Reynolds was a great performance. I'm going to spoil the ending, so if you don't want to have the ending spoiled, then tune out, but, beware spoilers is the name of the show. We tend to spoil the movies. Really, the only big spoiler, because the thing is, when you watch the movie, if you've ever seen any movie like this before, you're going to know exactly what's going on. It's Max Headroom. It's Ready Player One. It's, the big evil corporation. If there's a guy in charge of a corporation who's a major character, he's the bad guy. I mean, we know that's how this works. And the bad guy is Sorrento. The bad guy is, any number of examples from pop culture over the years. And when you're doing something like this, you just need to nail what you're trying to do. You need to stick the landing. You need to make sure that, like I said last week with Long Shot, you need to put enough of a twist on it where following a formula doesn't feel formulaic, for lack of a better, phrase. You can follow the formula. The formula exists for a reason. You just gotta make it interesting and worth me watching it in that thing. And this movie does that. Is it good enough where if you haven't seen Endgame yet, maybe, see this instead of Endgame? No. But granted, at this point, Endgame's already done like $2.5 billion. So, who cares? I mean, this movie it's actually a really pleasant movie. And it's pretty short, too, for what it is. There's one other thing I wanted to mention about it that was interesting. I've been playing Pokemon since I was 3 to 5 years old. So a lot of the higher concepts of this franchise weren't quite like it's the movie's designed in a very weird way where anyone can walk in and kind of get what's going on, but there's a lot of things that are going on that don't require you to know more, but knowing more would help your understanding of what's happening. Like, if you go in with knowing nothing about what Pokemon is or how it works, then you're going to be a little bit confused with a lot of the concepts. like how deeply evolution factors very deeply into the story, and they don't really touch on it in the movie what it is. They very briefly touch on the traditional relationship that humans have with Pokemon toward the beginning of the movie, and then that's completely ignored for the rest of the movie. To the point where they've turned Pokemon fighting into dog fighting illegally on the black market. And it's for someone who, if you're someone who's played through all the games or played through any of the games at this point and you have a approximate understanding, you'll be fine. But I think that a lot of the concepts are really dependent on you knowing what's going on, like in advance before going into the movie. So I'm not really sure what else to add for this, because I was just genuine. Oh, the CGI. There are a lot of sequences in this movie that's very CGI dependent. And for the most part, it's passable. The CGI is passable. You can see it, you can go, like, it doesn't look fake, it doesn't look like, there's no plasticized looks. That said, there are some sequences when it looks like the characters and the Pokemon are on different planes of existence. There's one sequence toward the end of the second act where they're escaping from Torterras who are destroying everything around them because they're just moving, and they've grown to be massive sizes. There's where Lucy and Tim are running, but they stop short, and you can 100% tell there's a green screen behind them. Because of how shallow the shot is. But it's just things like that in a movie like this, you need to really nail home. And a lot of my CGI issues were more toward the end of the second act, and for the third act, they really got it. And in the beginning, there isn't too much CGI that's needed, besides establishing shots and having Pokemon in the background. I mean, yeah, they're there and they're doing things, but it's one thing to focus on. So, like, when Pikachu gets really badly hurt, and they need to go to bring him to what they find out is Mewtwo after, it's a Generation 7 Pokemon. I don't remember the fucking name of it. It's some little mushroom shit. They're leading him. The mushrooms don't look like they're on the same plane as the rest of the movie. And then when they capture Mewtwo looks like he's on a different plane of existence than the human characters and the human counterparts. At one point, when Tim has a breakdown to Pikachu, he what's it called? He puts Pikachu's hat back on him, and you can tell the hat goes from his hand to not being in his hand, but then there's a hat CGI'd into his hand to put onto it, instead of he's using a stand-in, and then CGI Pikachu around it. But yeah, it's just things like that are small that they probably could have put a little bit more thought into for the sake of the movie. So we'll wrap up there for today with Detective Pikachu. If you have the opportunity to see this movie this weekend, I would see it. It's probably gonna get swallowed up by the third week of Endgame, but it's a pretty fun movie. And I can honestly say, I think Endgame's gonna win out this weekend, only because I saw this in Dolby, I saw it in Dolby Cinema at AMC, and the screening I saw of Endgame earlier this week in Dolby Cinema, was more full for around the same time. That was on Monday. This is on Friday. This is a new release. That was Endgame in its second week. And they're splitting the screen between Endgame and Detective Pikachu. And Detective Pikachu has worse hours for screenings. It doesn't have night screenings. It has day screenings, which is going to hurt it, I think, in premium formats to begin with. So we'll wrap up there for today. Go see Detective Pikachu. I'm very pleased to say I was incorrect about how good this movie was going to be. And I'll be back. I'll be doing another episode tomorrow. I'm going to be seeing, I'm going to pronounce it wrong the entire time I'm doing tomorrow's episode. I can guarantee it, despite watching a movie where I say it over and over again. Tolkien is apparently how you actually pronounce it, which is not how anyone I've ever heard in my life ever up until this point has pronounced it, besides on Legends of Tomorrow, and I thought they were just being stupid on there, but apparently that's right. So we'll wrap up there for today. We'll be back tomorrow with Tolkien.